Hi, Kevin Coop here, and this is FaceTime with the Content Guy. So I think most of us would agree that brand equity is something that, every company has to pay very close attention to. You got to cherish it. You have to nurture it. I think you have to, almost every decision a company makes, it has to go through the filter of how does this affect our brand equity? Does it help our brand equity? Does it hurt our brand equity? We have to constantly pay attention to that because how our customers perceive us, which is essentially what brand equity is the most important thing in terms of how we do business. Well, there have been some stories recently that popped up that have made me think about that because they really all have to do with brand equity and how different kinds of companies and different kinds of industries are dealing with this issue. First example would be Weight Watchers. Okay, there was a story the other day about Weight Watchers in the Washington Post and the challenges that it is facing, largely driven by technology. Not what they're doing with technology, but what other companies are doing with technology. And essentially, what the story says is that Weight Watchers has issues because services that it has traditionally charged for, services that it has always been able to make money on, now people can get for free. And go figure, the story's on the Washington Post. That ends up being something the Washington Post knows something about based on its recent acquisition. So basically, the Post describes it this way. It says, Weight Watchers offers something that most other diet programs don't. Weekly meetings with a community of people who provide encouragement and support, like Alcoholics Anonymous for overeaters. You pay to attend and get weighed on a weekly basis, and once you attain your weight goal, you don't have to pay again unless, of course, you gain your weight back. But now social networking makes it possible for people to kind of create their own support systems, right? They can create their own communities of people who are trying to lose weight. Now, it remains to be seen if these kind of self-created systems are going to work as well as the Weight Watchers system. I'm not necessarily sure they will, but it's certainly something that Weight Watchers has to deal with. It has to figure out how to sustain its business model and do so in a way that sort of sustains its own brand equity and continues to burnish it. And that's never an easy thing to do. Another example is JetBlue. All right, long time, very successful discount airline, which announced this week that basically it's going to create a different class of section in some of its airplanes to appeal to business class and first class customers that were going to other airlines. And it's going to kind of wall these sections off, and there'll be sliding doors and flat beds, and there's going to be free meals and free alcohol, and it's going to be, it's going to be a party up there as opposed to in the back. And, the question I think that JetBlue has to answer is, boy, how is this going to affect our brand equity with all of the customers that have made us successful because they saw us not just as being sort of a discount airline, but as being an egalitarian airline, right? It was seen as a place where everybody got treated essentially the same way. Everybody paid for the same stuff. Everybody got, direct TV for free. So they're going to have to be very careful, I think, about how they promote these new products and services in a way that doesn't disenfranchise the customers that have made them a success for so long. And again, not an easy thing to accomplish. Finally, the last example I would use would be the Apple Store. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal about this the other day, and how basically the Apple Store seems to be suffering from a lack of leadership. And part of the problem is they don't have a leader right now. The last guy who ran this division for the Apple Store, John Browett, was brought in April of 2012 and was gone by October. And he was brought in to replace Ron Johnson, who left the Apple Store to, how shall we call it, for his ill-fated rendezvous with J.C. Penney, and he's currently out of work. But the Apple Store doesn't have a leader right now, and that seems to be showing in the fact that there have been no innovations in terms of customer service and what they provide at the Apple Store. And that was something that Johnson paid a lot of attention to. He was constantly trying to upgrade the Apple experience. When he left and Browett came in, well, Browett focused more on cost cutting, which may be why he himself was cut. So right now you've got this store, this Apple Store, which, again, better than most stores, but better than most never would have cut it back in the Steve Jobs days. And I think that could be a real problem for the Apple Store. They've got to be careful about this. Now, listen, they're still terrific. When I was out in Portland, the Microsoft Store, they got a big, brand new, gorgeous store on this great street corner right in the middle of downtown. And I went in there, and it was really, really, really cool. And then I went to the Apple Store, which is, only about a block or so away in the middle of a mall, sort of down in the lowest level, and it's a really tiny store. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, boy, they let them get a great location. Now, I got to tell you, the Microsoft Store maybe had 3 customers in it, okay, and lots of employees who weren't doing anything, not talking to anybody. The Apple Store mobbed, and the employees were much more engaged. And that's a real advantage. That's a differential advantage for Apple, but they can't take that for granted. They've got to continue to innovate. And listen, they've got to find a leader. They've been looking for one for a long time. And I know this personally because, they're turning over every rock because their headhunting firm actually called me 6 months ago asking me for some names. And calling me, you're really talking to a lot of different people. I gave them some names, but they still don't have a leader. Maybe it's time to get a new headhunting firm. But this is something Apple has to pay attention to because the Apple Store is a critical part of its brand image. And if it doesn't pay attention to that, if it doesn't nurture it, if it doesn't cherish it, it doesn't burnish it, at every possible moment, it could lose that differential advantage. Listen, this is what companies have to do. They have to pay attention to their brand image. That's what makes them different. That's what gives them an advantage in the marketplace. And if they don't, they run the risk of being less relevant or, heaven forbid, obsolete. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this Thursday morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.